There's a specific dollar figure sitting somewhere out in your future, and I mean a precise, calculable number where your money quietly clocks off from being a hobby and clocks on as a second income. Most Australians walk straight past this line without even noticing it happen. They're too busy checking their balance and feeling like nothing's changing. But something is changing underneath the surface the whole time. It's happening whether you're paying attention or not. And once you cross it, there's no going back to the old way of thinking about money. Today, I'm breaking down the 3 thresholds that flip your financial life from hard slog to runs itself. And they're not motivational fluff, they're maths. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you'll know roughly where your own lines sit. Here's the thing about building wealth in this country right now. Between rate rises, the cost of living, and everyone's second cousin having an opinion on property, it's easy to feel like you're rowing against the tide and getting nowhere. You check your super, you check your savings, and it feels like the number barely moves month to month. But wealth doesn't build in a straight line. It builds in thresholds. Cross one, and the whole game changes underneath you. Even if your bank app still looks pretty ordinary on the surface. There are 3 of these lines. Cross the first and your money starts pulling more weight than you do. Cross the second and your job becomes optional instead of essential. Cross the third and you're free, full stop. Let's get into it. Threshold 1, the crossover. Say you're tucking away $800 a month into a solid, diversified portfolio. That's $9,600 a year. No dramas, pretty achievable for a lot of working Australians. In the early years, your balance grows because you're the one feeding it. Your contributions are doing the heavy lifting and your returns are basically pocket change because the base is still small. That's the bit that makes people give up. It feels like nothing's happening. But here's where it gets interesting. According to Canstar's analysis of Vanguard Index data, Australian shares have returned an average of around 9.8% per year over the last 30 years, dividends included through GFCs, pandemics, the lot. Run that rate against your $800 a month and somewhere around the $95,000 to $100,000 mark, something flips. Your annual return, not your contribution, your return, starts to outweigh what you're putting in yourself. Your portfolio is now earning more in a year than you are contributing in a year. Sit with that for a second. That's the moment your money stops being a side project and starts being a colleague. You could get hit by a bus tomorrow, figuratively, touch wood, stop contributing entirely, and your portfolio would still be growing faster than it did back in year 1. And it's worth being honest about why this trips people up. With the RBA cash rate sitting around 4.35% right now, a lot of Australians are parking their savings in a term deposit or a high interest account and calling it a day because it feels safe and the number goes up every month like clockwork. Nothing wrong with having a buffer there, but that same $800 a month sitting in cash at 4% will get you to your crossover point at a completely different pace than it will invested in a diversified portfolio, averaging closer to double that. The comfort of cash comes at the cost of speed, and most people don't realise it until they do the maths side by side. This is exactly why compounding feels like a con in the early years. It's backloaded. The boring years, year 1, 2, 3, aren't wasted. They're the entry fee for the years that actually move the needle. Usually year 7 onwards. And here's the bit most people miss. You don't have to stay stuck at $800 a month forever. Get a pay rise, cut the subscriptions you forgot you had, throw your tax return at it instead of a holiday. Every extra dollar drags this threshold closer. Whether you're starting with $200 a month or $2,000, the crossover's coming. You just have to still be in the game when it arrives. If you're in those slow early years right now and it feels painfully quiet, that's not a sign you're doing it wrong. That's the foundation setting. Quick one before we move on. Drop in the comments what number you think your own crossover point sits at. Even a rough guess. I'll read a few out. Threshold 2. The salary match. This is the one that actually messes with how you think about your job. Right now, the average full-time salary in Australia sits at roughly $106,700 a year, based on the latest ABS wage figures. So picture the day your portfolio's returns alone match that number. Using a long-run average of around 10%, that happens once your invested assets cross roughly $1.1 million. At that point, Your money is generating what amounts to a full-time salary, except it doesn't call in sick, it doesn't need annual leave, and it works every single day of the year, including the AFL Grand Final and Boxing Day. Now, to be dead straight with you, that return isn't locked in every single year. Some years the market throws you 18%, other years it hands you a loss and a headache. This isn't a guarantee, it's a long-run average. But stretched out over time, it behaves like a second income sitting quietly in the background. Think about what that actually looks like day to day. Picture a nurse or a tradie mid-40s who's been quietly investing since their late 20s. They're not flashy about it, nobody at work knows, they still pack their lunch and drive the same ute they've had for years. But behind the scenes, their portfolio crossed this line a while back. On paper, their household income doubled, even though their payslip looks exactly the same as everyone else's on the floor. That's the quiet power of this threshold. It doesn't change how you look, it changes how much control you actually have. Here's why this threshold matters more than the number itself. It changes your relationship with work. When your portfolio is earning what you earn, your job stops being survival and starts being a choice. You negotiate harder because you're not desperate. You walk away from the boss who treats you like rubbish. You take the punt on the business idea you've been sitting on for 3 years because you've finally got a safety net underneath you. Money at this level isn't just money, it's leverage over your own life. And this is where the curve genuinely goes vertical. Because now 3 things are stacking at once: your salary, your ongoing contributions, and your portfolio's own returns. At $1.1 million, you might be earning roughly $110,000 in returns, plus still tipping in $20,000 to $30,000 from your salary. So next year's base isn't $1.1 million anymore. It's closer to $1.25 million. Every cycle outpaces the last, which brings us to the final line, the big one. Threshold 3, financial independence. Financial independence means your investments cover your actual cost of living indefinitely without you clocking on anywhere. The classic Aussie framework here is the 4% rule, though a lot of planners these days build in more of a buffer and work off somewhere closer to 3.5 to 4%, particularly given how long retirements are stretching out. Let's run the numbers. Live on $70,000 a year, and you're looking at needing somewhere between $1.75 and $2 million invested. Push that to $90,000 a year, and it's closer to $2.25 to $2.6 million. At $110,000 a year in expenses, you're in the $2.75 to $3.1 million range. Sounds enormous, I know, but here's the part that genuinely surprises people. Someone investing $1,500 a month at a 10% average return hits their first million in roughly 20 years. Their second million? That doesn't take another 20 years, it takes closer to 7. The third million comes faster again. Every additional million requires less time than the one before it, because the base doing the work just keeps getting bigger. This is exactly why financial independence feels like a myth at the start and almost inevitable near the end, and it's exactly where most people misjudge the whole journey. They look at the grind of the first $100,000 and assume the rest of the road feels the same. It doesn't. The slog in your 20s and 30s is the tax you pay up front, so your 40s and 50s can run on autopilot. Even your super sitting there quietly on the current 12% guarantee rate, your employer's tipping in is doing this exact same job in the background, whether you're paying attention to it or not. It's also worth saying financial independence isn't about never touching money again. It's about the choice being yours. Some years the market will hand you a rough run right when you least expect it. And that's exactly why the buffer in that 3.5 to 4% range exists in the first place. So a couple of bad years early on don't wreck the whole plan. It's not about predicting the market. It's about giving yourself enough breathing room that you don't have to. The people who understand this stay in the game. The people who don't quit right before the curve bends in their favour and spend the next 20 years wondering why wealth always seems to happen to everyone else. So wherever you're sitting right now on this path, whether you've got your first $500 invested or you're closing in on that first million, remember, the trajectory isn't a straight line, it's a curve. These 3 thresholds are real, they're mathematical, and they're closer than they feel from where you're standing. The only thing that actually stops you reaching them is quitting before the maths gets to do its job. If that gave you a bit of clarity, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new here, and turn notifications on so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.